Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and today in the last of my Shaketube videos, I'm going to be chatting with you about The Tempest, right here. William Shakespeare's The Tempest, written right near the end of his career. So I think I've read The Tempest 7 times. I know for certain I've read it 6 times, but I think I've read it 7 times. And the thing about this play, this is not Shakespeare's most complex play. It is not his most ambitious play. But to my mind, it is his most beautiful play, and it is his wisest play. And as somebody who privileges beauty and wisdom over complexity and ambition, I think it's his best play by a long way, by just a tremendous margin. So I want to just talk a little bit about the beauty and the wisdom. So first, we'll get to the beauty. The Tempest has in it my favorite speech in all of Shakespeare that I've read, and I've read about 2/3 of the plays. So there is a sentence in Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, which is my favorite sentence I've ever read, period. And I'm planning to do a video on it at some point. But this sentence of Virginia Woolf's is perfect. It's a perfect sentence. Now, it is not a sentence that reveals a great deal, or maybe even anything, actually, about the story or the plot or the motivations of the characters, etc., etc. It is just a perfectly written sentence. It's a sentence that has such carefully considered architecture, such carefully considered sounds. Everything in it sort of plays together really, really beautifully. And this speech, as a speech, does what that Virginia Woolf sentence does as a sentence. So I'm going to read the speech to you, and this is this is in Act 5, Scene 1. And this is Prospero addressing the audience just after Ariel has kind of essentially convinced him to show mercy. But I want you to listen to the alliteration in this speech and the assonance in this speech, the way the words kind of just echo off of each other, the way they kind of bounce around and reflect each other. Like light and mirrors. Anyway, this is the most beautiful passage, to my mind, in the most beautiful play that Shakespeare ever wrote. Ye elves of hills, brooks, standing lakes and groves, and ye that on the sands with printless foot do chase the ebbing Neptune, and do fly him when he comes back. You demi-puppets that by moonshine do the green sour ringlets make, whereof the yew not bites, and you whose pastime is to make midnight mushrumps that rejoice to hear the solemn curfew, by whose aid, weak masters though ye be, I have bedimmed the noontide sun, called forth the mutinous winds, and twixt the green sea and the azured vault set roaring war. To the dread rattling thunder have I given fire, and rifted Jove's stout oak with his own bolt. The strong-based promontory have I made shake, and by the spurs plucked up the pine and cedar. Graves at my command have waked their sleepers, oped and led 'em forth by my so potent art. But this rough magic I here abjure, and when I have required some heavenly music, which even now I do, to work mine end upon their senses that this airy charm is for, I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book. So that's just perfect. That's perfection, in my view. But now to the wisdom, okay, which is really the crux of this video. I wanted to talk a little bit about how The Tempest, for me, is in conversation with Titus Andronicus, okay? So Titus Andronicus comes very near the beginning of Shakespeare's career. The Tempest is very near the end of his career. It may have been the last play that he wrote by himself. Titus Andronicus, okay, written by the youth Shakespeare, is an exploration of vengeance. Okay, wondering if there might even be virtue in vengeance. The Tempest is all about supplanting vengeance with forgiveness, supplanting vengeance with mercy. And it's written by a much older man, a man who has learned a great deal and who has not only refined his art, but refined his thought. You might even say refined his heart. So the Tempest understands that to negotiate the progress from vengeance to forgiveness is to really find a balance between human instinct, okay, human appetite, and divine or otherworldly compulsion. And we see this in multiple places in the play. We see this tension, this beautiful tension being explored. So the first instance of this that I want to talk about is we're looking at Act 1, Scene 2. It's right at the beginning, okay? Miranda's freaking out. She's seeing the shipwreck and the waves, etc., etc. She has a sense that her father may be behind it. She knows what he's capable of. At one point, Miranda says, "Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer." I mean, there is no more piercing expression of empathy in literature that I know of. "Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer." And then just a few lines later, "Poor souls, they perished," she says. "Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth." Okay, so here's this young girl who is powerless, who has really no control over her environment at all, and she is telling her father that if she had that power, if she were immortal, if she were otherworldly, if she were a god, then she would have sunk the sea into the earth to bring about a compassionate end for these sailors on this ship. And then, let's see, later in the play here, maybe the most famous, most important part of the play. So we're looking at right at the beginning of Act 5, okay? And Prospero is just checking with Ariel. Is everything done, right? Is everybody ensnared in the way that I would have them ensnared? And Ariel confirms this. And Ariel also lets Prospero know how much these people are suffering. Okay, he describes Gonzalo's tears. And Ariel tells him, Ariel's an air spirit, remember, okay? So he is not of this earth. He is otherworldly. He is a kind of a being of the wind. And Ariel says, "Your charm so strongly works them, that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender." And Prospero says, "Dost thou think so, spirit?" And Ariel says, "Mine would, sir, were I human." And then Prospero says, "And mine shall." So this is the inverse of what Miranda was talking about earlier. There we had a young human being putting herself in the position of a god to bring about a compassionate end. And here we have a creature not unlike a god, a spirit, putting himself or imagining himself in the shoes of a human being in order to bring about a compassionate end. And what both of these things do through the play, right? Miranda's compassion, "Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer," and Ariel's compassion, they instruct Prospero. And what I love about that is that Prospero, if ever there was a character who knew everything and could do anything, it was Prospero. But here we have his servant and his daughter instructing him how to be a better human being, instructing him what it means, what it should mean to be a human being. And it is not to take revenge, though he has every reason in the world to take revenge. It's to forego revenge when he has every reason to indulge it. Prospero learns humility. And it's not just from Miranda and Ariel. There are instances in the play where this idea, okay, is explored in other ways. A little later in the play, once Ferdinand has been reunited with his father, we see Ferdinand saying this, okay? "Though the seas threaten, they are merciful." Right? So the corporeal world itself, which has all the power to dash a ship to pieces, to rise up, to sink and swallow. The sea itself has the power to show mercy. And it's noteworthy that Ferdinand says this because earlier in the play, Miranda has this to say about Ferdinand when she first sees him. I might call him a thing divine. All right, I love that phrase, a thing divine. The word thing is humanity boiled down to its basest parts. Okay, bone, blood, flesh. But she says I might call him a thing divine. All right, so Ferdinand on some level embodies both worlds, right? The earth itself and the airy realm, humanity and the divine, the godlike. And so when Ferdinand later in the play, at the end of the play, makes that observation, though the seas threaten, they are merciful. It's powerful, right? It ties back to that idea of him being a thing divine, that he could see that. So the last instance of the Tempest being in conversation with Titus Andronicus that I wanted to point out is in Act 4, Scene 1. And Prospero's talking about Caliban and his confederates and their plan to end his life, end Prospero's life. And Prospero says about Caliban, a devil, a born devil, on whose nurture can never stick, on whom my pains humanely taken, all lost, quite lost. And as with age his body uglier grows, so his mind cankers. I will plague them all, even to roaring. So these few lines harken back to Titus Andronicus in a way that makes me think Shakespeare had Titus very much so in mind when he was writing The Tempest. So that bit about Caliban, a devil, a born devil, on whose nurture can never stick, makes me think of how people look at Aaron in Titus, okay? There's that line, is black so base a hue, okay? Aaron's child, who they're going to put to death just because of its skin color. They think that because it has black skin like Aaron, it must therefore be evil like Aaron. So there's this question about whether or not we are what we are through nature, through being born as we are, or through nurture, if we become that way, okay? And I don't know that Titus answers that question. I don't know that the Tempest answers that question either, but I find it really interesting that both plays pose that question. And then at the end of those lines, I will plague them all, even to roaring. Tell me that doesn't sound a little bit like Tamara in Titus saying, I will find a day to massacre them all. I will plague them all, even to roaring. It seems to be the same kind of thing. So here we have Prospero embodying all of this twisted rage that we see in Titus Andronicus. But it eventually gives way to mercy, to grace, to forgiveness. And God, it's a beautiful thing. I just absolutely love it. So that's The Tempest. Later today, I'm going to put up a very brief video just talking a little bit about the Julie Taymor films of Titus Andronicus and The Tempest and the documentary Shakespeare Behind Bars, as well as a little bit about where we see The Tempest kind of cropping up in contemporary literature, 20th century and 21st century literature. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed Shaketube. If this was your first time reading The Tempest, please read it again down the road. Like I said, this was my 6th or 7th time, and I noticed new things in this that were incredibly powerful to me that never occurred to me before. So it really is true, right? That Shakespeare repays attention, that you can read and reread and reread these plays, and they're going to reveal new depths all the time. Steve Donoghue's right when he says that you need to live with these plays, that you need to live in these plays, and they're never going to stop showing you new things. So I hope you like The Tempest, and I look forward to seeing your videos on it as well this weekend. So adios.